Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, August 24th, 2026. I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins?
Here.
Mr. Barato?
Here.
Mr. Olgiati?
Here.
Ms. Rabeau?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. Witt? Here. Mr. Verkust?
Here. Okay. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes approval of the regular board meeting minutes of August 10th, 2026, approval of the bills in the amount of $2,042,449.54, and approval of the July revenue and expenditure report. Unless there are any changes, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Batkins with support by Ms. Rabeau to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, the clerk did ask to add item F3 regarding accepting a grant that he was successful in securing. So unless there are other changes, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda with the addition of item F3.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is announcements. I do have a few announcements. Our third and final concert in the park is this Thursday, August 27th, at Miller Park at 6 p.m. We will be featuring Harmonic Swell. Harmonic Swell. For more information, please visit the Parks and Rec Facebook page or their page on the township website. Our Harrison Township Library has just released their fall newsletter. Please make sure to take a look for all of the upcoming events and special happenings over at the library. A reminder, our summer shuttle has one more month of operation for the season. The summer shuttle operates until the last weekend in September. For use of the shuttle, please call 586-612-4454. You can also find information on our website. And for more information on that or other township events, call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. You can also visit our website, www.harrisontownshipmi.gov. Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move forward on our agenda to item D1 from the fire department. Our fire chief is here. If you'd like, Chief, I can read the agenda item unless you wish to read it. I don't know if you have it. Okay. Board members, the fire department is requesting approval to hire 4 firefighter paramedics or paramedic interns, or a combination of both. Harrison Township Fire Department currently has 4 excellent candidates that have been ride-along students with the department through the Macomb Community College Fire Academy, EMT courses, and paramedic courses. The interaction with these 4 candidates across the last 2+ years has given the department the confidence to move forward with the hiring process. The 4 candidates are currently in the process of taking the National Registry Paramedic exam to qualify for their state of Michigan paramedic license and completing all the additional requirements defined in our Harrison Township Fire Department firefighter paramedic application. The candidates who meet all of the requirements would be hired as probationary firefighter paramedics. Based on the conversation with the chief, currently I believe that's 1 candidate that's met that, pending some of the other hiring requirements. The candidates who meet the hiring requirements minus passing the paramedic exam would be hired as Harrison Township firefighter paramedic interns, a temporary employee position we had success with in the past. This was a 90-day kind of a trial period. Once that intern passes their National Registry Paramedic exam, we would then hire the employee as a probationary firefighter paramedic. So the request is to hire the following candidates for one of those two positions: Cole Strange, Matthew Sties, Matthew Walsh, and Jared Deely. Hiring these four candidates will provide adequate staffing for the department, thus allowing us to continue delivering the highest level of fire and advanced life support, transporting services to the Harrison Township community that we serve and honored, they are honored to serve. We've budgeted for these positions to be filled immediately. So the cost is defined within the collective bargaining agreement. In other words, the starting pay for a probationary firefighter is defined, and the letter of agreement regarding paramedic interns also defines a rate of pay. The recommendation is to hire the four firefighter paramedics or interns, or a combination of both as presented. And
I was working on a
Oh.
motion that addressed some of the other issues, if you want me
okay, yep, because there's, right, okay, go ahead.
to. And I'm happy to make this as I'll read, the one part was, we were talking with the chief earlier, and under the letter of agreement, if they're firefighter interns, normally they would have to come back to the board for approval to hire, and the chief had said, like, well, why don't we just authorize the hiring of them at the same time, and that way the board can have the discussion all.
And we ran into that one time when when that 90-day period was coming up, but our meeting was after the 90-day period, they passed the thing, and so.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to make a motion to support this. The one thing that I'm adding to my motion that isn't part of the chief's recommendation is that we would direct the fire department and the chief to collect and provide appropriate data on the impact of the increased staffing. So as a board that makes the decision, as well as taxpayers can understand what the impact is of this new level of service, because we've been at 27 for a long time. And so what does this mean when we add 3 new people? How does it impact how we provide? What's it look like from a budgetary standpoint? What's it look like for 25,000 people with the service they receive? And, so that way we can make an informed decision at the point when we're like, hey, we went from 30 to 29, what do we look like at that point in time? So that way, that would be the one thing that I'm offering to the board as I'd be offering as part of the motion. So it'd be I make a motion to hire Cole Strange, Matthew Stice, Matthew Walsh, and Jared Deely as firefighter paramedics or firefighter interns as appropriate based on if the candidate has passed their paramedic exam, and to allow the hire of any firefighter interns as firefighter paramedics upon the passage of their paramedic exam, all subject to the completion of any pre-employment requirements, and to direct the fire chief to collect and regularly provide appropriate data on the impact of the increased staffing.
Okay, is that clear motion? Is there support for the motion?
I'll support.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Ms. Rabot. And so, some discussion already. Obviously, the chief is here to address any questions, but there may be some things that you wish to add, chief, so at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, board and residents. So the first thing that I'd really like to talk about is the backstory. So the backstory is really special because all 4 of these candidates are Macomb County Community College students. All of them we've known for 2+ years. They've done their ride-alongs with us. Also, 2 of the candidates really are in the fire service because of our Harrison Township Local 1737 firefighters. One of them worked for Hungry Howie's, and he ran into our guys and was asking them about the career, and they helped guide him and follow the path to becoming a firefighter. So he's gone to the fire academy, he got his EMT license, he just completed paramedic school, and really a great success story. Another one was brought to us by one of our firefighters, and he had graduated from high school, and he worked at the gym where one of our guys worked out at, and he brought him in and to an open house. And he said, have you ever thought about the fire service? He brought him to the open house. He met some of our people, and they had such a great influence on him that here he is today. He's one of the guys who actually had passed the paramedic exam as well. So the important thing to remember is that this is a really competitive market, and it's competitive because of the level of service that we provide here in Harrison Township. So we provide very high level of service for fire, EMS, but our EMS is advanced life support, which is literally the difference between life and death. Now, our surrounding communities, some of them have EMS, not all of them are transporting. And when you live in a peninsula or an island, whatever you define Harrison Township as, that's vital because, not breathing, between 4 and 6 minutes, you're clinically dead. Response times are extremely important. And what I can tell you is that having individuals who are trained as paramedics, it is the best level of service you can possibly get. If you look at our surrounding communities, we have excellent mutual aid partners. We have Selfridge Air National Guard Base. We have Clinton Township. They're advanced life support. However, they don't transport. Selfridge Air National Guard Base does not provide EMS. Mount Clemens, they provide EMS, basic EMS. However, they do not transport. And then on our first running card, second running card actually is St. Clair Shores. So our mutual aid for EMS is actually coming from St. Clair Shores. So if they're responding priority 1 to Lakeshore Drive, they could be lights and sirens, that's priority 1. It could take 20 minutes for them to arrive. And that's why it's really important that we're adequately staffed. Now, we've done a great job across the last 6.5 years. We made our fire apparatus advanced life support so that we could start treatment, but it's the transport piece that really makes the difference. We're always like paramedic is door to drug. Well, on top of that, it's really important that we can get people to the hospital for surgery, for traumas. I think that it's been proven with some of the large fires that we've had here in the township recently that staffing at 8 is ideal. Going to 10 per platoon, yes, that's a big move and it's a shift, something that we haven't done before. However, we've been fiscally responsible. We plan on doing this within the budget. We've got the data to support it, so we'll be able to get you that data upon your request. And the other part to really remember is that, we have injuries. We have people that take vacation days. We have people that have sick time and have family emergencies and funeral leave. And so it's not like these, 8 to 10 people are always on duty. They have lives outside of here as well. And injuries are a big piece of things. There's a direct correlation between working overtime and people injured. And I respect Harrison Township and their conservative nature, and we are abiding by that. It's taken us 6.5 years to get here. When I first was appointed as chief, I identified that we really should be at 10 per platoon. However, we couldn't afford it, and we didn't go to the taxpayers to ask for a tax millage increase. We really just made sure that we were spending money wisely. We were capturing as much revenue as we could through insurance companies, through health insurance and Medicare, and all of that is because of our firefighters writing excellent reports, really honing our skills. And then on top of all of that, we've improved our level of service, our training, our equipment with the support of this community. I think it's really paying off. The millage passing, I think, is a great indicator of that. And, one of the reasons why we're able to hire for is because we're innovative. We're a smaller department that does everything a large department does, but we're nimble, and we're nimble in the hiring process. So we're asking for approval to hire people before they've even completed everything because we know that they're a hot commodity. Like these 4 individuals would be gone if we let them go to the open market. So we're like, if you equate it to like Major League Baseball, we're drafting these kids right out of high school. Not really, but shortly after high school.
Yep.
And so that really speaks to us being a destination place, but not just, for firefighters to come here and work, but for our students as well. So this paramedic, ride-alongs that they do, it's basically 3 months from May to August. They are learning so much, and it's really like a 3-month interview for our people to find, who's meeting our standards, because our standards are higher than what they were 6.5 years ago. And that's a good thing. We were down 1 firefighter for about 8 months this year because we couldn't find the right person. And so we're not just putting butts in seats. We're hiring qualified people for this community. And, that's the purpose. The purpose is to provide a high level of service to this community that has, excellent mutual aid, but we're missing some parts in the mutual aid EMS piece. And so that's why it's really imperative that we're trained at the paramedic level and why we continue to support it. So I don't know if you have any questions for me related to it, but like I said, I wouldn't be asking for 4 if these weren't 4 people who definitely are deserving and they want to be here, and we're really fortunate to have that. There's not too many departments that are able to bring 4 excellent candidates to their boards. And so we feel really fortunate, and that's all the hard work of Local 1737. They teach these students when they come in. They treat them, very kindly, and they want to be part of our team and family, which is, it says a lot. I'm really proud of everybody.
Questions, board members?
Are there any retirements on the horizon?
So we have 1 retirement in January of '27. So that would put us down to 29. And if we were to find another candidate that meets our qualifications, then, potentially we would hire another one. If not, we really like our feeder pool of our paramedic students. We've got a waiting list for people to come here and ride along with us. We can only take 3, and we'll always have double digits that are trying to come here.
Yeah. So to that point, we do know 1 retirement that's been identified. There are other potential retirements.
Right.
So that's a consideration. But I think it's important to address that, okay, what if there's a retirement? Regardless of whether it's today or whether it's January, we would be looking, we're not going to be looking for bodies, we're going to be looking for quality candidates.
Absolutely.
It's important, I guess, to me, to share, when we brought the chief on board, after a relatively short period of time, he began the discussion on getting to 30 personnel and saying, is staffing at 30 a possibility? And I said, sure. I mean, let's provide the highest level of service. However, I can't do it through a millage increase. So we got to figure out other ways that we might potentially get to do that. And so kind of so the chiefs worked hard, 1730, the union folks, 1737, have worked hard to put us in a position where we are able to staff at 30. Does that mean that we'll always be at 30? No. That means that, in my opinion, as 1 voting board members, that we're going to try out staffing at 30 for a period of time. That period of time is up to this board. So if we do have a retirement in January, and the chief does have a worthy candidate, it's up to us to decide if we hire that person or not. So that, ultimately, that control rests with us. And I don't know if we hire these individuals in September and 1 or 2 of them are worthy of becoming probationary firefighters based on passing the test. They still have got at least 30 days, right, before they count towards staffing. They work on a 40-hour schedule to kind of learn the ropes, figure out how things run. So optimistically, mid-October, we could increase our staffing. And it wouldn't be to 30, likely. If everybody passes, hey, that's good, Could be 1, 2, 3 guys, maybe it is all 4. But even if we are successful, or these candidates are successful, and we're staffing at 30 from October to January, that's really not a window to be able to say, okay, chief, what data do you have? Because one of the things that we experience in Harrison Township is summer months are the times when we have that surge in population, when, 12 different languages are going to be spoken at Lake St. Clair Metro Park in a weekend when they go on a run, and when our marinas are at capacity and that demand is there. And believe it or not, a lot of these firefighters are young guys. They've got children that are in school, and that's the same time that they want to be able to take some time off. So, getting through a summer, in my opinion, and being able to surpass that, in other words, getting past the summer. So October to October, in my mind, is a time frame when we could say, okay, we're looking at a year's worth of data. So if we do have a candidate in January, and we do have a retirement. I'm not opposed to that hire at that time, but there will come a time when we as a board want to be able to, probably the full-timers meeting with the chief and have some data to present to the full board to say, what does potentially a year of staffing at 30 look like? How does it impact, staffing? What percent of the time are we staffed at 8 or better? What impact does it have on our overtime budget? What impact does it have in a lot of measurable ways? So, but ultimately, I said to the chief, figure out a way to do it without a tax increase, a millage increase. Chief figured that out. Now we want to give this a certain trial period, in my opinion, to see, what does staffing at 30 do?
Well, we also realized when he came on board that he inherited old equipment and old trucks.
Mhm.
So that was something we had to keep in mind. We have to keep equipment up to date too.
Sure.
Not just staffing.
Yeah,
So-
and, as good of a job as the chief did, he was unable to stop the hit-and-run accident on 984, which was the one shortcoming he's had in his tenure, and so we had to, a truck that had to be replaced, but he figured it out.
Yeah.
Dean, did you? I'm sorry,
Actually,
Mr. Old Judge.
ended up being ahead on that, and more importantly, nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
Or
for
killed.
sure. Yeah, probably not something we could very easily have a subject there that isn't worth.
But I think it's also important to remember too, is that, when we first started this, a little over 6.5 years ago, we didn't have a fire apparatus replacement fund, and we're also funding for that as well. So, we intend on our next fire apparatus, our next fire engine, we'd be able to pay cash for that, along with a squad, so.
Or at least have the cash on hand to be
Yeah.
able to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, that would ultimately be your decision.
Sure.
But
right.
having the funds available is part of our goal.
Yep, absolutely.
I think this program that you have is a great feeder system. I think it's just kind of continue to bring some fresh candidates all the time. What you talked about baseball, it's almost like a farm system.
Yeah.
Kind of, so you can bring these kids in, you can work with them a little bit, you have an idea, you can vet them. I think it's a great program. So many times, I look at down on the internet and I look at departments that are looking for candidates to hire. I mean, every time I pick up the computer and go to Facebook or Instagram or whatever, everybody's looking for candidates to hire. So I think it's a really, really good program. I think you guys are doing a really great job with it.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
We have a great relationship with Macomb Community College, and I sit on the fire advisory board for the college, and then also get to sit in on interviews for the fire academy as well. So I get some face-to-face with some of the students, and then, some of our guys also do some teaching at the college as well. And so, like, people ask me all the time, like, what are you doing for recruitment? Well, I think what we've all realized here, the best recruitment tool is retention. So what are we doing to keep our people? What are we doing to have a healthy culture? How are we training? What level of service are we providing for our community? And that has a huge impact because our people are finding our next people, and you don't bring someone into a place that you don't enjoy working at. And that speaks volumes to this community.
So are we going to have a pizza oven in a future
I'm hoping
agenda
so.
request?
That would be incredible. Like, if I wasn't a fire chief, I'd own a pizza place.
Yeah, all right. I'm looking forward to flavored crust.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion, board members? All right, hearing none and seeing no public comment. We've got a motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Ms. Rabot to hire these firefighters per the motion that Mr. Witt proposed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board, and thank you, chief, and 1737 for all that you do for the residents of Harrison Township.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the support.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda is item E1 regarding our Great Lakes Water Authority contract amendment. Board members, every 4 years, Great Lakes Water Authority, or some might say GLWA, negotiates agreements with their customers. We have been a GLWA customer, GLWA or DWSD, Detroit Water and Sewer Department, the precursor, for over 35 years. In recent years, GLWA has instituted repeatable standards for establishing the variables used to calculate our rate structure. I'm going to pause there. When I first became supervisor, when you negotiated water rates, it was with Detroit Water and Sewer Department, and you literally negotiated them. And if you have certain numbers that you might manipulate, it ultimately lowers the rate. And it was pretty clear to me early on that you could, in essence, manipulate numbers, and if you got counterpart across the table to agree with those numbers, you could get a better deal than another municipality. And I want to say there's like 76 or 136, many, many municipalities that are served by GLWA. And I believe from that experience and seeing how Great Lakes Water does things, that this is a little bit more predictable. Like everybody has input on how the rates are calculated, and there are kind of standards. So there isn't that much room for any one individual customer to manipulate data or otherwise, get a better deal. So the practice of using these variables based on historical averages, along with the shifting of majority of cost to fixed charges, has virtually eliminated rate volatility and standardized the rate structure for the entire southeastern Michigan ratepayers. Again, there was a time when every year the new rates would come out in the late spring, and you would see 10% increases and 12% decreases, and a lot of this had to do with look-back periods. The majority of the rates now are tied into fixed monthly costs and not the commodity cost or the literal amount of water that we get. We still bill our residents on commodity costs. When you've got a single person living in a home and you've got a family of 8 next door, they're clearly going to use different volumes of water. So our rate structure to our residents is based on commodity. But the variability from a wet year to a dry year, specifically the summer, can cause an increase and a decrease in the volume of water. So GLWA bases most of their rates based on fixed costs, whether they pump 2 billion gallons or 3 billion gallons, whatever that number is, in the course of a summer, they still have a CEO. They still have people who do maintenance. There's still fixed costs. Maybe a little more electricity, maybe a little more chlorine on a dry summer, but those are small components. So the numbers that we're talking about here in this contract drive those fixed costs because they determine our share. This is how much it's going to take to operate the place, ignoring variables in water. You get one share of that pie. Within the board packet is a proposed contract with GLWA for the next 4 years titled Amendment 8. We've worked with GLWA over the past 6 months to negotiate the terms of this contract. It includes a minor reduction in our max day value, which will result in a minor reduction of our overall rate or share of that pie. Now, I just say negotiate. The reason why there is some negotiation in our contract is because we are a storage customer, and that's a big variable. The idea is as the whole system grows, do we build entirely new plants? Does GLWA invest in some gigantic storage? Their theory is that if member customers can have storage throughout the system, we can fill that in the middle of the night, drain it during those high demand days, and that kind of helps even or shave their overall system because there's a surplus of water. But when it's one of those hot days and it happens to be that 10 a.m. on July 7th is the highest demand hour, they say, what did you use on July 7th at 10 a.m.? And they use that to measure everything. And if you're a non-storage customer, you're treated one way. If you're a storage customer, you're treated different. So there was some discussion on how we operate our tank, what controls we have in place. The number we're talking about, I think, was a peak number, and I think it was from 5.2 to 5.09, so a relatively small variable. And on a multi-million-dollar contract, I think it affected about $60,000 was the swing or delta that we talked about. So a little bit of discussion based on how we operate our system. We do have Amendment 8 in here. I think if I was going to draw attention to any portion of this, let's see, page 146 of the packet, you can see our annual volumes in million cubic feet is relatively constant at 49 1,500 million cubic feet per year. The next page, 147, is Exhibit B, Table 2. It talks about the pressure range. We're not so worried about that. But the far right columns, the maximum flow rate in millions of gallons per day, speaks of the max day and the peak hour. So we're looking at going from 3.90 to 3.67 in terms of million gallons per day for our max. And then we're talking about 5.09, which shows as the last 3 years, but actually our rates have been based on a slightly smaller number. They were proposing 5.09, and so through discussions, they were proposing 5.2. Through discussions, we were able to get that to 5.09, demonstrating how we operate the tank. The 3.67 number is a new calculation, and it's, there's a term they used over and over. It's a statistical term, like it's like Freudian or something like that. Like there's a certain statistical mathematician that came up with this way of looking at things. But bottom line, they said they would look at a statistical number that would mean that you have a 4% likelihood of exceeding this number. When I asked how many municipalities have adopted that 4% value, it's their recommended value, and they said 99.9% of municipalities that they've negotiated with have just taken that 4% number. The idea is you can go lower on these numbers. You can voluntarily go lower, but if you exceed those numbers, you get a penalty that makes that gamble definitely not worthwhile. So after working, again, 6 months with GLWA, with our not only our senior account bookkeeper, but obviously the public services director, we believe this is the appropriate amount. GLWA supports it, and the entire negotiating team on behalf of Harrison Township support the 367 and 5.09. So the recommendation is to approve Amendment 8 of the Great Lakes Water Authority contract as presented. If we do approve this, I prepare a package, PDFs, scan it, send it to them. There's some signatures, and I think we have to have a set of minutes reflective of this that are signed by the clerk. So any questions, discussions, or is there a motion?
I'll make that.
Okay. Is there support?
Support.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is the clerk's office, item F1.
Yes, tonight is our annual marijuana business appeal agenda item. As required under our ordinance, our marijuana businesses recently applied for the renewal of their annual permits. The ordinance states that if, just going over a couple of the key portions of our ordinance that we're talking about tonight, the ordinance states that if a permit holder does not commence operations within 2 years of the issuance of their initial permit, the permit shall be deemed forfeited. They're allowed 1 year. Administratively, we can grant an additional year, so that second year has to come from the board. So the board can, based on appeal, and we have in the past, grant that extension based on it showing a good cause. The other portion of the ordinance that we'll be talking about tonight is that the ordinance requires all applicants must be current on taxes and any other financial obligations to the township. We do have 3 properties that are before us tonight for consideration. The first one that I'll talk about is from Blue Sapphire. And Blue Sapphire is one of our longstanding businesses that does business, but they are also one of the
Appellants?
appellants, I guess, for their tax classification, as this board has discussed previously, regarding that lawsuit, regarding the calculation between agricultural and an industrial situation.
Or commercial?
Or commercial, yeah. And so as that works its way through the court, that amount has been withheld from payment from them. When we were going through this, there was recently a transfer in one of the related businesses, and so we wanted to make sure that money had been addressed as far as what would happen if, the new owner says, well, I didn't pay, that's not my problem, that's the people before me's problem, what do we do? So we worked with the representative from the firm, and they said, there's an agreement that set that money aside in escrow. So if there's a ruling one way or if the township's right, they have money set aside the escrow to pay it. If theirs aside, they have money in escrow to go on a vacation, I guess, or something, more appropriate for their business. And so that money is sitting there, but again, it's just outstanding debt. And so as we go through it, we felt that, this was outside of what we could approve administratively. So I feel comfortable, especially for the Blue Sapphire one, recommending approval of that. Again, that's something we are well aware of, but, again, administratively versus what we can do here. The other one is for RJB Enterprises. They did have a real property tax bill that was outstanding, and they were working through the process to get cash free to pay the outstanding bill. And we would recommend approving, they also had the same personal property taxes outstanding as well, but we would recommend approval of this one as well, with the assurance that, if that payment's not made, then we would bring it back to the board at a future date. And then the third one would be Flourish, Michigan. And so this was a property that was taken over by a business, and they've been previously in operation, but due to an expansion of their business, they can't really, they're adding on, so they can't grow product while they're doing construction next to it, essentially. And so what they have, they're approved to use, but they're working through an approved building permit with they've had some issues, I think, with contractors and that kind of stuff, but they're working through that. Our building department felt comfortable that they were moving forward with the process, everything appropriately. So again, because they're not in operation, we technically couldn't approve them administratively, but it would be our recommendation that the board grant their appeal as well. So we are recommending that the board approve all three of these appeals to allow these businesses to continue. In the end, I know I sent email as we went through the application process earlier to the board. The market has decided that several of our businesses weren't going to operate anymore, so we don't have to figure this out. Eventually, the market's going to figure it out for us. So, especially with, these are longstanding businesses at this point in the township, and as long as we're keeping an eye on them, we feel like we can support them and grant these appeals and allow them to continue forward.
And there are representatives, I believe, present from these businesses.
Absolutely. So
the board members said, hey, I'd like to hear from them, or I've got questions or whatever. So we can have discussion. Obviously, we can entertain a motion. We can talk about, ultimately, the board can make individual motions or a single motion to approve all three, or approve one, deny the other, whatever that combination might be. I suppose if we're going to split them up, it would probably make more sense to have individual motions. And if board members have specific questions about any one particular business, we can certainly ask if someone is present in the audience who represents that business.
I have a question about the second one,
Okay.
which is they are in process of freeing up funds to be able to pay the taxes. Is that correct?
That's what it says.
Do
here.
we have a set time frame of when we are expecting? So if we do approve this, have we given them a deadline of when we should be receiving those funds?
I think short answer, no.
We've been working with them, we've been going back and forth, and I know Mr. Crawford's here, so if he wanted to add to that.
Of course. Good evening to the board. Jerome Crawford, General Counsel for RJB Enterprises, actually, as well as Blue Sapphire Enterprises. And we've actually been able to since inform the clerk's office, working with the deputy clerk, that tax bill has been paid in full.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. I know you were out last week.
Terry was here last week, she's off this week.
Was it the both? Was it the real and a
The
personal?
real property. All the personal property is
Just the real.
exactly what the clerk outlined. They've been held.
Okay, I thought I saw something from
Yeah,
it.
something came through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
62's paid.
And you know what?
So the 60.
Yeah, that's not in dispute.
Correct.
62.
And I apologize.
No worries. No, to your point, we said like working on it. I was like, well, been worked on, but no worries. As of Thursday, that has been paid in full. I believe deputy clerk did send it over to the board. So
Great.
that's all.
So now we're waiting on,
A lawsuit, essentially.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so they're part of, so that second portion is part of that lawsuit?
Yeah, that personal property tax
Got
is a
it.
question of,
Got it,
is,
got it.
is this a commercial designation? Is this industrial?
Right.
Is it agricultural? And I think it's important to note that as it stands right now, and maybe the general counsel would be better to share this, but ultimately, the decision as it pertains to what the courts have said, says this is, they're in the right, for lack of a better word. It is being appealed. It's our appeal on behalf of ourselves, and I think there's a few other communities involved. So it hasn't been decided, so it isn't really realistic to say you should pay this, but if we just stop doing it, then there'd be some question as to whether this amount is truly the amount that's due, and it would be in their favor, so.
And you gotta remember, marijuana as a business was brand new, so assessors across the state were going, what do we do? And they looked to the state tax commission and said, hey, can you guys issue a bulletin? These are these decrees that they issue on a regular basis that say, businesses of this type need to be classified this way. So that way we're, again, providing uniform standards across the state for assessing. For whatever reason, the state tax commission decided not to do that, so assessors were, based on their experience and their knowledge, making the best decision that they could at the time. And this is working through the process. That's part of, breaking new ground on a new industry.
Yeah, sometimes it's black and white, sometimes they're literally willing to say, this is how we see it. But to be fair, sometimes they say, well, let the courts decide. Let people debate this in a court of law, and let judges come to a decision of what's the appropriate way to classify these businesses. In this situation, that's what they've decided. It's ongoing. Eventually, it'll be decided, but I think, it would be hard to say, I think I'd have a real hard time saying, hey, you haven't had property taxes paid, personal property taxes paid that you've been told you don't have to pay, but we're going to deny your business. That would be a loser. So, is that clarification on the personal
Yeah,
property?
that's great, thanks.
Nothing else to add from my vantage point. That's all accurately stated. I just wanted to clarify that real property's been paid in full.
Yep, sounds
Hey,
good.
I apologize.
No worries at all.
Yeah, I knew it said that it was ongoing,
Yeah.
right?
I know you all were ships passing in the night. You and
Yeah, we were.
It
Yeah.
was sent to us as well,
It
so
was-
that's
you know
why
what?
I was confused that it was
Yeah,
on here.
and
but
I
thought I read
apologize.
that it was, and
I
so
was
we're
on
good.
vacation
I just wanted
last
to
week,
make
so I had
sure.
a little digging out there.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions, discussion on any of these other issues?
So is Blue Sapphire operating today?
All those are both operating today. Yep.
RJB
Yep.
operating today?
Yeah, they were probably one of our first businesses up in operation, and have consistently been so. We have not had any enforcement issues or anything else that would preclude anything. Really, with the payment of the real property taxes, it's only that personal that's outstanding, and that's, we had worked with the council there to be able to have a copy of the escrow agreement and all that kind of stuff, so we knew exactly where that money was, so it wasn't a situation when we're concerned about anything at this point. We felt pretty comfortable going into this.
So our ordinance reads, must be current on taxes and any other financial obligations to the township. Is approving this a violation of our ordinance?
No, because our ordinance allows the board to hear and approve based on appeals, as we have in the past, for any variances over there. That's why, so it's the difference between what the ordinance lays out as an administrative process, and that's how my hands are tied when I'm working in the office. When we're sitting here as the seven, we're an appellate body for that administrative process, so we can make deviations from that based on the best interest of
Right.
what we feel.
In essence, what we said was, if it's black and white, if it's clear, you meet the targets, Adam has the authority to say, a license renewed. If it doesn't meet those targets, that's close enough. Well, we don't necessarily want to empower one board member to make that decision, and frankly, I wouldn't want to
don't
be the
want
one
that,
board member who would have that power, because the board might say, well, I don't agree, that wasn't, that, in example, saying, hey, listen, the only taxes that are outstanding are taxes that are basically being decided in a court of law, and maybe set aside in escrow or somehow accounted for. That, to me, seems like one of those things that if I had administrative authority, I'd say, we're checking all the boxes there. But, to be fair, we said, like it says, the ordinance reads this, but if you read it in totality, if you don't meet these, the administrator has to deny, but it can be appealed to us. And we can then use, judgment to say, well, that's explainable, that's understandable.
Are any other businesses withholding personal property taxes besides these two?
Not to my understanding, no.
You know, and the others were all current. And this is kind of one of those things, if you're a part of that process, you make a kind, so let's say that you and I are both cannabis growers in Harrison Township, and you choose to pay all the taxes due, and I choose to withhold some based on the fact that I'm a member of a group of people fighting this. If we are successful, you and I as cannabis growers, I get to keep my money. But you don't lose, I have to give you your money back. I'm sorry, I don't have to, the township has to, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a judgment call. Do I withhold the money pending the outcome of the court case, or do I pay it to avoid the appearance that I'm in arrears and I could be denied? That's kind of a business decision.
I got you. And I understand the whole court case stuff and just trying to get my head around it.
Sure.
Yep. So if it's easier, do we
I mean,
want to?
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the appeal for all three businesses as presented.
Okay.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello to approve the appeal for all three businesses. Is there discussion on that?
Well, it's already been asked, but the court seemed to move pretty quick sometimes. Kidding. Any idea how long this is going to be?
Keep in mind, the first decision went against us.
I know, I understand
Yeah,
that.
so
So it's being appealed through.
Appeal.
Yeah, the last few legal bills that, because if you recall, I think the last time we approved
Yep.
legal bills for this was a budget of about $20,000.
Yep.
The last few bills have been relatively small, which generally means there's no, like, they've submitted briefs, maybe there's a question here or there, and it probably be in that decision phase. But, I mean, Court of Appeals can take whatever time frame they choose, in essence.
it's hard to estimate. Certainly it would seem between 6 and 9 months would be a good number, but it's hard to say.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion, questions, board members? If not, if there's a willingness, there's no public comment, be willing to vote here. Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello to approve all three marijuana business permit appeals. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board, and thank you to the folks that came out on behalf of these businesses. All right, next is item F2 regarding a liquor license transfer. Mr. Witt?
Yes. So the clerk's office has received a request from the applicant Summit Beverage Inc. to transfer the ownership of the 2026 Resort SDD license, non-transferable SDM license, Sunday sales permit, Sunday sales permit PM for SDD license, and Sunday sales permit, from Harry's Liquor Store, 36650 Jefferson, Casas Market. All the necessary paperwork and approvals relative to liquor license approval have been completed and are in order, so we would recommend approval of the transfer.
All right. Any questions, board members, discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Olgiati. Is there support? Was there support?
They're all looking at you like you're.
Oh, I heard no, I'm like, oh,
I was just taking a breath.
Okay,
support.
okay. Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Witt to approve the liquor license transfers as presented. Is there discussion, board members?
I'm always confused with these. This is just a sale. Are they selling the business and a new owner is coming and then we just have to approve that the new owner who's, okay.
Yeah, and because it's an existing license, what happens is the state essentially approves it automatically. Like,
Okay.
they have a quicker process than we do. But what the State Liquor Control Commission allows is for local communities to enforce their own ordinances. So that does involve them coming through and pulling permits to go through and have trades inspections, as well as fire department in there to make sure that they're meeting standards for building and occupancy, as well as, any kind of improvements that are necessary. It's an opportunity for us to get into a building that is otherwise older, maybe not having permits, and maybe having some issues that we don't know about because we can't go in there for inspection. So we get in there to make sure that, again, it's safe for the public to be able to be used for this purpose.
Yeah, so our building department has inspected, on page 165 of the packet, you can see they have given their approval for the transfer. And this could be, well, this is a place where we have issues or problems or recurring ordinance violations. This is kind of our chance to say, state's saying, well, they're meeting all our requirements, but we need to see the locals and see if they're supportive in the event that we're approving something and the locals are saying, hey, you guys in Lansing don't realize, but these people are, causing a lot of trouble.
Okay, great.
And that, in this case, it appears that that's not the case.
I've never seen a problem with that location.
No.
In all the years.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll open the floor for public comment.
Thank you. Zach Eineman, 39544 Detroit Street. So I'm kind of a nerd, and I actually do read through the board packets prior to meetings. I know it comes as a shock. I'm not sure how many people do that, but this kind of caught my eye. It has nothing to do with me, per se. I just thought it was kind of curious that I was looking up Summit Beverages, Inc. online, and I wasn't able to find really any information about them. The only information I found on them was that they were incorporated this year on March 17th, so they're very short term. And then I was looking at the application, and I noticed, the principal is somebody who's moved around quite a few times in the last 10 years. They're a relatively new resident of the state of Michigan, and don't seem to be relatively local here either. Another curious thing I found was that when they listed their occupations in the last 10 years, it's all nursing, which is a great occupation, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the beverage industry. So, liquor licenses are scarce. There's only so many, and they're taken very seriously, which is why they're limited. My question is, what do you know about the applicant personally? What gives you confidence that they're going to be a worthwhile, trustworthy business operating in the community when it seems like they've only been around for a short term and there doesn't seem to be a lot of information about them out there? Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. So as one board member, I don't know the individual personally. I can't vouch for the fact that they're trustworthy or not. I do believe that a part of the application process is background checks associated with criminal activity. I don't know that we can say to.
And also with nursing.
Yeah, well, and I don't know that we can say, Bob's lived here 20 years, but Joe just moved here 6 months ago, so we can't transfer a license to Joe because he's only been here 6 months. Or Bob has 20 years' experience in this industry and Joe is new. Neither of those are criteria that we're empowered to use as selections in the process.
Yeah, this is a transfer. Transfers do not require approval of the local governing unit. So we have nothing to say here officially, unless we have ordinances that are related to local plumbing, building, plumbing, sanitation, health code rules. And that's sort of been that was a change maybe 20 years ago that the Liquor Control Commission had previously said we're going to wait until we hear from locals on transfer. Now they just approve transfers. But we do have an ordinance that still has requirements for the plumbing, zoning, building codes that we go in and make sure that those are safe. So where our concern is the safety of the building and the use as its use and occupancy. And the state has taken it on themselves to handle a lot more of the applicant review and that kind of stuff for these types of transfers.
So those questions could be more applicable for Liquor Control Commission, but I don't believe that we can approve or deny based on the duration of residency or prior occupations, things like that. So those aren't things that we took into consideration because we're simply not empowered to do so. Any other board comment? Hearing none, we've got a motion with support to approve this. Mr. Witt, does that require a roll call?
No.
Nope. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda is item F3 from the clerk's office.
Yes, thank you, Board, for adding this to the agenda tonight. The U.S. Alliance for Election Commission is a nonprofit that puts out what they election excellence standards. They're nonpartisan standards that they work with a group of previous clerks, current clerks, county clerks, registers, all the people associated with elections to sort of put these high-level standards in place for how elections should be run. As part of that, they offer a grant program to help you implement some of those standards. In essence, they made available for communities that have election cycles this year to allow to apply for grants, and they were set amounts based on population. So I applied for the grant. We received $10,000, and I'm asking for board approval to accept the grant and to allow us to use it to offset election-related expenses.
Make that motion.
Support. Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado to accept the grant. Discussion, board members? For one, I would like to say thank you to the clerk for keeping an eye out for these things, and that's $10,000 less we'll have to spend on the upcoming election.
Absolutely. Great job.
Yep, good job. Anything else? Hearing none, we've got a motion with support to approve the acceptance of this grant. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda, item G1 regarding our part-time maintenance staff. Board members, currently there is one opening in the part-time maintenance staff department and another anticipated opening at the end of October. Pending upcoming interviews and physicals, we would like to fill these vacancies. I am asking for approval to hire 1 to 2 part-time maintenance staff. These are at-will employees. Our next meeting is 3 weeks away, and we also need time to evaluate these potential hires. Hires?
Yeah, fires.
Hires. Looks like a typo there. Hires on the job. I'm asking for authorization to hire 1 or 2 part-time at-will maintenance employees, subject to passing a physical. Names would be communicated to the board after the fact. Our policy defines the pay rate based on the position, so looking for,
I'll make that motion.
all right. Is there
Support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Ms. Rabot. We've interviewed already, I think, 4 candidates, and I think we have 4 more to go. So hopefully we can move forward. Sometimes folks have to give a notice, and then ultimately what we're looking for is a little bit of an overlap with the outgoing person and the incoming people to try to, convey a lot of those little details. The current maintenance staff, we did ask them, try to keep a log or a running tab, but like as an example, one of the things that we've learned over time is when it's fish fly season, maybe we need to shut off some of those outside lights. And if you transmit that to the guy, then, he or she will know that and avoid a mess. But if you forget about it, well, you'll be reminded come next summer. You'll have a cleanup one morning and you'll say, hey, tonight I'm going to make sure those lights are off. But those are the kinds of little details that, there's, hey, this trash can fills up before that one on the bike path or, whatever. And we're just trying to have that continuity to avoid complications with a new maintenance staff. Discussion board. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is item H on our agenda, public or board comments. So we'll open the floor at this time for public comment. We will take comments on any subject, and we ask that you try to limit those to 5 minutes in length.
All right, Zach Eineman again, now to the real reason I'm here. Well, we have another meeting and another millage on the ballot coming up. One that took me by surprise a little bit, and the ballots have barely been counted from the last one, and we're already asking for a little bit more money. The timing surprised me a little bit because I got the feeling when you were talking about this last meeting, like this is an idea that's been around for a few months. So I guess I was just wondering why it wouldn't have been part of the August ballot initiative in some way, shape, or form, whether it was part of police and fire, so it has a comprehensive millage, or whether it was going to be separately but still on the same ballot. My assumption is it's probably because you didn't want to interfere with the other one being called a renewal, which would have made it harder to pass. And also, if you put both on the same ballot and you see them right next to each other, it looks like an increase because technically you are paying more. Again, which would have hurt the ability for both to pass. That's why I'm assuming you split it up. Either that or you feel like the August election was some sort of mandate for you to spend more money. So let's talk a little bit about the millage. So I understand the premise. Grants are very important for any community. They are. I do agree with you there. I agree with some of your feelings about the state and how they, control grants and they don't give you the revenue sharing anymore and they kind of dangle a carrot in front of you. I do agree with all that. But let me just address some points that were made. It was said that, or the question I should say was asked, will having this millage allow us to apply for more grants? Well, the answer was basically not necessarily. So even if we pass it, we might not be applying for any more grants. It was also said that if we pass it for these 4 years, well, if we make more, or if we raise more money through that than, we really needed, we might not go for another millage 4 years later. I got to be honest, I kind of highly doubt that that's going to be the case. And if you do raise more funds, I'm going to assume that the residents aren't getting any refund. That's just going to go to something else. And then you were saying, well, one of the reasons you have to have this millage potentially is because it could drain township funds, especially the general fund, which was, mentioned. So we had an auditor up here a couple months ago who said that the general fund was basically stocked with money. We had twice as much as it was even, recommended by them, which is great. But, you can't say, well, we have all this money in the general fund and we keep, applying for and getting all these grants and putting matching funds like you just did for the pump station on Prentice. And then on the other hand, say, but we don't have any money, we're poor. It doesn't make any sense to me. You can't feign poverty but still have all this money and apply for all these grants. It doesn't make any sense. And then another thing that was said as well is that, we have to spend more money to get more money from the state. Well, potentially, but this isn't the private sector where you spend money to make money. This is a government. In the public sector, these are people that produce goods and services, and people freely spend their money to, purchase it. So yes, they can take more of the money and use it how they wish. You guys are public servants, so it doesn't necessarily follow the same theory. With that said, sometimes I get the feeling that you guys kind of see yourselves as a CEO to a certain extent. You kind of think about what it's like in the private sector. I know it's been said before, well, if this were GM, I wouldn't have to follow this law and we wouldn't have to worry about, abiding by this, but you're not. At the last meeting too, I thought it was kind of curious that the supervisor said, well, hey, you'd listen to your cardiologist. I don't know. The cardiologists have gone to school for many, many years and they're experts in their field. And I'm sorry, but I don't trust you like I would a cardiologist, especially when you consider some of the comments that were made previously about not really supporting the Headley Amendment, not really being comfortable with locals voting, on their local taxes. So I got to be honest, I'm not really going to trust you as much as I would my cardiologist if I had one. And then, you guys all run as Republicans. All of you have. So my question is anybody up here going to ever take a stand against putting something that raises taxes potentially on the ballot? Is there anybody that's going to stand up and take a pledge and say, well, I'm on this board, there's not going to be anything that I'm going to vote for to be put on a ballot that's going to potentially increase taxes, whether it's fire and police, whether it's an increase in the grant millage in the future, whether it's more funding for the library or something completely new that you might put on there. Is anybody going to take that pledge and say, not while I'm on this board? Or at least, how about this? If I'm on here for 10 years, not the next 10 years. If you don't want to do 10 years, how about the next 5? I won't vote for any tax increase in the next 5 years to put it on the ballot. How about this? If you won't do that, meet me halfway. Will anybody up here take a pledge that as long as you're on this board, you're never going to vote for a Headley override? Will anybody take that pledge? That's my question. So I'd love to hear the answers to that, amongst other things. Thank you.
Thank you.
C. William Bardell, 30-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder, boy next door, clean up, fix up, people helping people. I just want to ask everyone to please check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook. Stay up to date on everything that's going on. And thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. I'll do my best to answer the questions from the resident. There were quite a few, and I apologize if I missed some. First, the question was, why was this ballot question not on the August ballot? The reason that I didn't bring it forward, and I'm but one board member, is when we talk about the things that we do as a township, there are some, what I believe to be must-haves. Police and fire is a critical service. Water and sewer, these are critical basic services, and there are very few communities that don't offer those. Applying for a grant, whether it's to enhance a property, these aren't must-haves. And I think it's the reason why many municipalities went out for police and fire millages in their August cycle, if they had one that's up. In the event that that didn't pass, I would feel that we'd have to try to do our best to educate voters and ask that question again in November. But I feel like this millage is something new, and I feel like it is something that is secondary to the public safety millages that we approved. It wouldn't have changed the fact that we asked for a renewal in August, because it would be two separate questions. Question one, will you renew existing millage? Question two, will you approve a grant millage? Whether we ask those questions both in August, whether we ask one in August, or whether we ask one in August and one in November, when all is said and done, we aren't raising taxes. We're putting forward to the voters the opportunity to decide for themselves what taxes they approve. Looks like an increase was one of the notes I had. It would be an increase. Right now, we're levying 6.35 and 2.35. We're asking for 0.3 mils additional, which is bring us up to a total of 9 total. Something about why did we do 2 questions and spend more money is what I perceived. We didn't spend any more money to ask the question that we asked in August. The amount that it costs to conduct an election in August and November isn't dependent on whether we have 0, 1, 2 questions on there. So there was no additional cost, and there will be no additional cost to either election because we had a question in August and a question in November. Will it allow us to apply for more grants? I guess you could say that. There's a point we get to where we won't be able to apply for grants because we're going to run out of money. We're spending money on matching dollars faster than we ever historically have. Since we don't have a general fund millage, we're not seeing the benefit of the increase in property tax values into our revenue. On the contrary, what we're seeing is gradually, little by little, the state legislator is chipping away at the revenue sharing that they do give to us, maybe approving veterans, disabled veterans millage or tax exemptions, property tax exemptions, which are all swell ideas, but little by little, Lansing is giving away locals money, and that's not debatable. And I was trying to write notes as fast as I can. Oh, one of the things that we discussed was this is a 4-year millage. We might not go out for another millage. That's true. I did say that. If it generates more than what we think we need, we don't have to. I can't decide that. This board can't decide that. This board can decide to put a question on, and if and when that time might come, if this is approved and we have a surplus, I think it would be important for us to be able to say, at that time, we're asking for this millage to be renewed, maybe increased, maybe decreased. Don't know, because that would be 4 years from now. But even if we do ask that, and we're sitting on a bunch of money, it's up to the residents to say, no, I'm not voting for that because, you know, you guys collected this much over the last 4 years and you've only spent this much. That's our job to educate the people who are going to decide if they do approve this in 4 years, if they would be willing to approve it again. Would there be a refund? No, there can't be a refund. We're saying we're collecting those funds. The idea is let's say over the course of 4 years, and I apologize, I don't remember the numbers, but let's say we collect $2 million, and in that 4-year period, we only spend $1 million. Well, then I guess 4 years, we only had to spend $1 million. We'd be good for the next 4 years, plus or minus, because we still have $1 million on deposit. If we collected 4 and we spent 3, then we might say, well, maybe 0.3 isn't the number. Maybe we have to recalculate that number to correspond to what we roughly saw in funds being spent. General fund. 2 times, our general fund balance is 2 times what they recommend. Our general fund balance is 2 times what they say is the minimum or great. In other words, having a general fund balance is a responsible thing to do. We are not flush. Many of our peers have a larger general fund balance. We operate pretty lean. We did contribute to the pump station on Prentice, but that isn't a general fund expenditure. That's a water and sewer expenditure. These funds wouldn't be proposed to be used for that. The funds that we collect through water and sewer sales are the things that fund water and sewer improvements. So while we were successful in getting a grant from the federal government to pay for a large portion of the pump station at Prentice and Ashland, it isn't something that would be funded through this. It could be. General fund can spend on water and sewer, but we've historically operated those separate. We're not feigning poverty, said the resident said it appears we're feigning poverty. I think it would be foolish for us to spend all of our general fund if we're going backward or not keeping up with inflation, and then say we're out of money. Now we not only do we not have a general fund balance, no rainy day fund, we can no longer match grants. So this is in anticipation of saying our general fund is not able to keep pace with the amount of money that we're spending on grant match. We have to spend more money to get more money. Let's talk about that. Gosh, I think it was, I'm going by memory, not always a good thing, but roughly 20 years ago, our statutory revenue sharing was about $600,000. 5 years later, it was cut to zero. I think we're back up to maybe $125,000. But the point is that the state is consistently and continually taking revenue sharing away from us. We've been able to operate without a general fund millage, and I say it all the time, but we're the only municipality in Macomb County that's doing that. But we're able to do that because we try to operate on the revenue sharing that the state shares with us. As they keep shrinking that, and we don't have a general fund millage to make that up, we're going in the wrong direction. And at the same time, the state's saying, but we're still going to offer you money, but you've got to give us some and match that. So the reality is, when we look at historically, we used to get $600,000 a year in statutory revenue sharing for nothing. Now, 20 years later, we get 1/5 of that, if I'm doing my math right, and they're at the same time turning around, dangling a carrot, saying, hey, we'll give you some of that back, but you've got to spend money. It's the push toward grants that's put us in this situation. When we talk about public and private, some things do translate. Some things from the private sector make sense in the public sector. Others do not. This isn't a situation of us spending money on advertising and selling more product. This is us being the smaller fish in the sea and the larger fish in Lansing deciding how we get our revenue. The resident said he doesn't trust us. That's okay. Then you should vote no come November, because it would appear that you don't support it. And if it passes, well, that's good. If not, then it tells me that the residents don't support this idea, and maybe they don't trust us also. But our recommendation, I don't expect every resident to understand every intricate part of revenue sharing, the amount of grant programs that are available, the minor things that Lansing does. And when I made the comment, just like there are people in other sectors of our lives that we entrust, good or bad, the residents of Harrison Township, through their vote, have entrusted us to be the leadership of the township for a 4-year period. They get a chance to evaluate that every 4 years. You don't like the doctor you're going to, you say, I don't want that doctor anymore. You basically vote that doctor out, you go down the street to another doctor. If the residents don't support us, don't believe we're doing a good job, they should vote accordingly, whether it's at the election for each of us, or whether it's a time that we're asking. So the parallel isn't to say that I'm a cardiologist. The parallel is to say that we select people who we believe we trust. As I said, you said you don't trust us. That's okay. Then vote accordingly. And by no means, me personally, would I ever declare I oppose any tax. I've had discussions in the past with people who say, I vote no on every millage. In essence, what that means is, I don't want police protection, and I don't want fire protection. I don't want someone who'll respond with an ambulance, because I just vote no on every tax. That's the beauty of our system. You have the right to do that. But I think the election shows us, and prior elections show us, that majority of people do support certain millages. Certainly, police and fire was one that was recently renewed with a pretty healthy margin, but it wasn't 100%. That's okay. But I cannot sit here and tell anyone what the folks in Lansing are going to decide in 6 months or 3 years. So declaring, read my lips, no new taxes. President said that, but the president isn't Congress, and Congress can say, well, we vote this in, and now the president has to say, oh my gosh, we've got to respond to that. So when I'm king, I can say, I promise I'll never do this or I'll never do that. But since I'm much, much smaller than king, and there's a lot of people at the state and federal and even county level that decide what dollars flow to us, and they have control over some of those, and they can turn them on and off. We saw that the solution in Lansing to road funding was to simply cut out sales tax on gas. That was a hit of between $100,000 and $200,000 a year in revenue. That's an employee. So the folks in Lansing said, we're going to solve the road funding problem by taking away one of your employees, and we're going to use that money to augment road construction or whatever that is. How could I possibly sit here and say, based on that, that I'm going to make a commitment on what the future holds? And ultimately, the best that we can do, the taxes, the majority of taxes that we all pay, in terms of a volume of your money, are not subject to your vote. I haven't decided what my state or federal income tax level is. I haven't voted on it. There are a ton of taxes. I have zero control other than electing one of 110 people and, your senator on what our gas tax is. But the fact is, one of the most local, impactful, and self-controlling taxes we pay are millage rates. Voters decide that, good or bad. Back in 2014, we proposed a road millage. It was pretty close, but it was defeated. There are folks who said, no, I don't want to pay a road millage. But every spring, our phones blow up with people saying, my road is trashed, what are you going to do about it? I can't. The only tool available to us at a local level is to offer a road millage or apply for grants from state agencies and county agencies that get our money in order to have roads fixed. So we have had some significant participation in Jefferson from Shook to St. Clair Shores. We bonded for that money because it was a large amount. Whether I like the progress or not, the fact is we've had to match the money to do Jefferson from South River to Metro Parkway. And we also had a match on Bridgeview Bridge. We've got a match associated with North River Road, and expected to be in 2029, we're going to have a match associated with North River Road from Bridgeview to the very end. So,
And a match on the bridge.
yeah, and a match in the bridge. Yeah, and we've had matches on several bridges. So, for those reasons, and then last, there was a question, would we oppose a future library millage? We don't put library millages forward. The library board does that. So we have control over police and fire. That's our responsibility. That would be a millage that we put forth. Obviously, we just did. But what the library does, asking me to support or oppose a library millage, I can tell you how I feel as an individual, but I don't have a choice over that. The library board does, and they're a separately elected board. So I'm sorry if I missed some of those comments. There were quite a few of them, but I did my best to respond. Any other board comment?
Well, I think it's important to know, too, that the matching millage fund, the question that you're asking to be put on the ballot in November, we cannot spend that money anywhere but on a millage grant.
On a match.
We can't just take the money and spend it elsewhere, like this resident suggested. We're not allowed to do that.
Understood.
And the other thing is, I don't know if anybody's ever looked at this, but I think that I know we're among the lowest millage rates in the county. I think Ray Township might be less than us.
So yeah,
We're way down there.
well, and I think a big part of that is when you look at, if we say compare ourselves to other Macomb County peers, one of the things that it's almost like I know some of my peers have talked about whether you're south of Hall Road or north of Hall Road. In other words, whether you're talking about a municipality that 10 or 15 years ago maybe had 40 or 50,000 residents, and now they're pushing 80, 90,000 residents. All of that taxable value growth associated with entire, thousands, frankly, of new homes. Those are new homes, new water and sewer assets, new roads. They're designed with sidewalks. They're 21st century neighborhoods. When you talk about municipalities south of Hall Road, you're talking about the majority of homes, aren't new. They aren't experiencing that taxable value growth. So you kind of have to look at that.
In our case, we're landlocked too.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of places we can go.
Any other board comment? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion?
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion with support, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Brian.